Every state in the U.S. holds secrets, stories that lurk in the shadows of its history. Tonight, we'll uncover 10 of the most terrifying paranormal tales, spanning every corner of this country. These are the stories that rarely make headlines, yet they persist, haunting those who dare to look closer. From ghostly encounters to cursed lands, these tales will make you question what you think you know about the places you call home. And by the time we reach the last number, you may find yourself asking, are these just stories or warnings? The United States is a land of endless stories. From bustling cities to remote wilderness, every corner of this nation holds its secrets. But there are stories that rarely make it into the history books. Stories of shadowed figures, cursed lands, and inexplicable encounters. Tonight, we delve into these tales, the ones that remain unseen by most but remembered by those who lived through them. These aren't just tales of haunted houses and ghostly whispers. These are deep, disturbing truths rooted in the land itself, the kind of stories that make you question the ground beneath your feet. By the time we reach the last story, you may find yourself double-checking your locks, or worse, wondering if the stories you grew up hearing weren't just folklore after all. Stay with me as we uncover 10 of the most chilling paranormal stories from across the United States, each tied to a specific state, each darker than the last. And remember, just because you haven't seen something doesn't mean it isn't there. Alaska, the haunted shipwreck of the Baychimo. In the frigid waters of Alaska's Arctic coast, where the icy winds howl like restless spirits, there is a legend of a ship that refuses to die. The SS Baychimo, once a proud cargo vessel, now roams the misty seas as a ghost ship. For nearly a century, it has been spotted drifting silently through the fog, its rusted hull a spectral silhouette against the desolate horizon. The story begins in 1931, when the Baychimo became trapped in the unforgiving ice near the town of Barrow. Her crew, faced with the brutal Arctic winter, abandoned ship, setting up a temporary camp nearby. Days turned into weeks, and when a violent storm rolled in, the Baychimo vanished into the blizzard. The crew assumed the ship had sunk, swallowed by the icy depths. But they were wrong. Weeks later, the Baychimo was spotted adrift miles from her last known location, eerily intact. Attempts to board her failed, as the unpredictable ice floes made it impossible to reach her. Over the years, she would reappear again and again, always in remote and desolate waters, as if she were deliberately avoiding capture. Those who dared to approach reported strange occurrences: equipment failures, sudden storms, and the inexplicable sensation of being watched. One chilling account comes from a group of Inuit hunters in the 1950s. They claimed to see figures moving on the ship's deck, their outlines blurred by the fog. At first, they thought it was a rescue crew, but as they got closer, the figures seemed wrong. Their movements were unnatural, their proportions slightly off, as if they were not entirely human. Before the hunters could investigate further, the ship vanished into the mist, leaving no trace. In 1969, a scientific expedition encountered the Baychimo near Point Barrow. They recorded their approach in meticulous detail, describing how the ship's decaying hull seemed to groan as if alive. But as they prepared to board, their radios went dead, and a sudden, blinding snowstorm swept through the area. When the storm cleared, the Baychimo was gone. Some say the ship is cursed, haunted by the souls of those who died in the icy waters of the Arctic. Others believe it has become a vessel for something far older and more malevolent, an entity that uses the Baychimo to lure the curious and the desperate to their doom. What remains undeniable is that the ship's legend endures, and sightings continue to this day. Fishermen, sailors, and adventurers all tell of a ghostly silhouette gliding through the Arctic fog, a reminder that some mysteries are never meant to be solved. If you ever find yourself in Alaska's icy waters and see the faint outline of a ship in the distance, think carefully before approaching. Because once you step aboard, there's no guarantee you'll ever return. West Virginia, the curse of the Mothman. Deep in the Appalachian Hills of West Virginia lies a town with a shadowed history, a place forever tied to a being whose name has become legend, the Mothman. The small town of Point Pleasant may seem unremarkable to those passing through, but for those who live there, its streets and forests are haunted by something far beyond comprehension. The story began on a chilly November night in 1966. Two young couples were driving near an abandoned World War II munitions plant, a labyrinth of tunnels and overgrown concrete structures known as the TNT area. What they saw that night would forever change their lives and the town's history. Looming in the darkness ahead was a figure unlike anything they'd ever seen. It stood nearly 7 feet tall, with glowing red eyes that pierced the night and massive wings folded against its back. As they stared in shock, the creature unfurled its wings and took flight, pursuing their car as they sped away in terror. The couples reported the encounter to local authorities, but they weren't the only ones who had seen it. Over the next year, dozens of sightings were reported throughout Point Pleasant and the surrounding areas. The descriptions were eerily consistent. A towering figure with wings and glowing red eyes. It seemed to appear at random, often near the TNT area, and always left witnesses shaken to their core. But the Mothman sightings were only the beginning. Strange occurrences plagued the town. Unexplained lights in the sky, electrical disturbances, and even phone calls filled with static and distorted voices. Then, on December 15, 1967, tragedy struck. The Silver Bridge, which connected Point Pleasant to Ohio, collapsed during rush hour, plunging dozens of vehicles into the icy waters of the Ohio River. 46 people lost their lives that day. In the aftermath, many began to connect the Mothman sightings to the disaster. Some believed the creature was a harbinger of doom, appearing to warn the town of impending tragedy. Others feared it was something far more malevolent, a force that brought destruction in its wake. Even after the bridge collapse, the Mothman didn't vanish from Point Pleasant's lore. Sightings have continued sporadically over the decades, not only in West Virginia but across the country. In 2007, a truck driver passing through Minnesota claimed to see a figure matching the Mothman's description near the I-35W bridge. Just days later, the bridge collapsed, killing 13 people. One of the most chilling accounts comes from a woman who lived near the TNT area in the 1990s. She reported seeing the Mothman perched on a tree outside her window late one night. Its eyes glowed red, even through the thick curtains. For weeks after the encounter, she experienced vivid nightmares of collapsing bridges and falling into dark, swirling water. She eventually moved away, unable to shake the feeling that she was being watched. To this day, the TNT area remains a place of mystery and fear. The ruins of the munitions plant are overgrown and crumbling, but those who dare to explore it often report strange phenomena. Footsteps echoing in empty tunnels, the sound of massive wings flapping in the darkness, and the ever-present feeling of being followed. The Mothman has become a symbol of Point Pleasant, its image immortalized in statues and festivals. But for those who've seen it, it's far more than a piece of folklore. It's a reminder that there are things in this world we cannot explain, things that defy our understanding and challenge our sense of safety. So, if you ever find yourself driving through the quiet streets of Point Pleasant, keep an eye on the treetops and the edges of the road. Because if the stories are true, the Mothman might still be watching, waiting for the next moment to spread its wings. Arizona, the vortexes of Sedona. In the arid desert landscape of Sedona, Arizona, a place known for its breathtaking red rock formations and spiritual energy, lies a phenomenon that defies explanation. Sedona's vortexes are said to be hotspots of concentrated energy, attracting spiritual seekers from around the world. But for all their supposed healing power, these vortexes hold a darker reputation. A gateway to the unknown, where time bends, reality fractures, and those who wander too far are never the same. The vortexes are scattered across Sedona's iconic landmarks, including Bell Rock, Cathedral Rock, and Boynton Canyon. On the surface, these locations appear serene, even awe-inspiring. But locals tell a different story, one of strange disappearances, unsettling encounters, and a sense of unease that defies the peaceful surroundings. One of the most infamous accounts comes from a hiker named Daniel, who ventured into Boynton Canyon alone in the late 1980s. A seasoned outdoorsman, Daniel was no stranger to the desert's challenges. But as he hiked deeper into the canyon, he began to feel an unnatural heaviness in the air, as though something was pressing against his chest. His compass spun wildly, and his GPS device, cutting edge for the time, began to malfunction. According to Daniel, the landscape around him began to shift. Rocks that had been behind him were suddenly in front, and the trail seemed to twist in impossible ways. He recalled hearing whispers, faint and indistinct, but growing louder the deeper he went. He tried to turn back, but no matter which direction he walked, he found himself back at the same spot. A clearing with a lone, twisted juniper tree at its center. Daniel was found 3 days later by a search party, miles from where he'd started. He had no memory of what had happened during that time. His watch had stopped, his camera's film was overexposed, and his boots showed no sign of the wear you'd expect from a 3-day ordeal. To this day, he refuses to speak about what he saw in the canyon. Stories like Daniel's are not uncommon. Visitors to Sedona's vortexes report missing time, where hours feel like minutes or vice versa. Photographs taken near the vortexes often reveal strange anomalies. Distorted figures, glowing orbs, and shadowy shapes that defy explanation. Some claim to hear music, soft and haunting, emanating from the rocks themselves. One chilling account involves a group of tourists who decided to camp near Cathedral Rock. That night, they saw lights in the sky, moving in patterns too precise to be natural. Then came the voices, soft and melodic, speaking in a language no one could identify. The group's phones and cameras all malfunctioned simultaneously, and the next morning, they found their tents had been rearranged in a perfect circle around the fire pit. Scientists have attempted to study Sedona's vortexes, offering theories about geomagnetic anomalies or unique mineral compositions in the rock. But these explanations do little to account for the experiences reported by those who visit. Even seasoned skeptics leave Sedona with more questions than answers, haunted by the feeling that they've brushed against something far beyond human understanding. The vortexes of Sedona continue to attract thousands of visitors each year, drawn by their allure and mystery. But for those who have felt the pull of their energy or the terror of their depths, they remain a place of caution, a reminder that not all beauty is safe. So, if you ever find yourself hiking the red rocks of Sedona, tread carefully. You may find more than breathtaking views waiting for you. New York, the ghosts of the Dakota Building. In the bustling heart of Manhattan, where the city's relentless pace drowns out most whispers of the past, stands a building that defies time. The Dakota Building, an architectural marvel completed in 1884, looms over Central Park with its Gothic spires and ornate details. Its walls have housed some of the most famous figures in history, but for all its grandeur, the Dakota harbors a legacy of tragedy and the inexplicable, a place where shadows linger longer than they should and whispers echo in empty hallways. The Dakota's haunted reputation began almost immediately after its construction. Workers reported strange occurrences, tools vanishing only to reappear in impossible places, footsteps echoing in unfinished rooms, and the chilling sound of someone humming a lullaby in the dead of night. The building's residents would later come to know these disturbances as only the beginning. One of the Dakota's earliest and most infamous hauntings involves a little girl, described by witnesses as wearing late 19th century attire. She is often seen playing in the halls, her laughter carrying through the otherwise quiet building. But those who see her say there's something deeply unsettling about her presence. One resident claimed that the girl approached her, asking, "Have you seen my doll?" When the resident turned to respond, the girl had vanished. John Lennon, a resident of the Dakota and one of its most famous tenants, reportedly had his own encounter with the paranormal. Before his tragic death outside the building in 1980, Lennon told friends about seeing a ghostly figure standing in his apartment. He described it as a man wearing a suit from another era, silently staring out of the window before fading into the air. After Lennon's death, his widow, Yoko Ono, claimed to have seen his spirit seated at the grand piano in their apartment, reassuring her with a smile. But the most chilling stories come from the building's lower levels, where the air feels heavier, colder, and alive with an unseen presence. Maintenance workers report hearing their names called when no one else is around. One even claimed to see the faint outline of a figure reflected in a basement window, despite being alone. Visitors who venture into the basement speak of a constant feeling of unease, as though something or someone is watching. The Dakota's hallways, though elegantly designed, seem to hold their own secrets. Residents describe shadowy figures at the edges of their vision, vanishing when approached. One tenant, a writer who had moved in to escape distractions, left after only 6 months, claiming that the building's oppressive atmosphere had driven him to near madness. He spoke of hearing voices late at night, speaking in a language he couldn't understand, and the sound of pages flipping in an empty room. The Dakota's connection to the paranormal remains a subject of fascination and fear. Some attribute its hauntings to the building's location, theorizing that it was built atop an ancient burial ground, a claim that historians have yet to confirm. Others believe the building's storied history, filled with both triumph and tragedy, has imprinted itself onto its very foundation. Whatever the cause, the Dakota remains an enigma. Its timeless beauty contrasts sharply with the unease that seems to seep from its walls, leaving visitors and residents alike wondering what unseen forces call it home. So, if you ever find yourself walking past the Dakota on Central Park West, take a moment to look up at its windows. You might see the reflection of something or someone that's not supposed to be there. Texas, the screaming forest of Caddo Lake. In the northeastern corner of Texas lies a place that feels as if it were pulled from the pages of a dark fairy tale. Caddo Lake, with its sprawling maze of bayous and cypress trees draped in Spanish moss, is a sight of eerie beauty during the day. But when night falls, the lake transforms into something else entirely, a haunting, almost sentient presence. Locals have a name for one part of the lake's dense woodlands, the Screaming Forest. And for generations, they've whispered tales of the unexplainable horrors that lie within. The Screaming Forest is a section of the swamp so thick with vegetation that sunlight barely penetrates its canopy. It's said that the area has always been shrouded in mystery, long before settlers arrived. Native American tribes avoided it, claiming it was cursed ground. Early settlers reported hearing unearthly screams echoing through the trees at night, wails that sounded neither animal nor human. The legend grew over time, fueled by strange disappearances and chilling encounters. One of the earliest documented incidents involved a trapper named Eli Pruitt in the late 1800s. Eli was known as a fearless man, accustomed to the dangers of the swamp. But one night, he ventured too deep into the Screaming Forest and never returned. Days later, a search party found his boat drifting in the water. His traps were untouched, his lantern still burning, but Eli was gone. The only clue left behind was his journal, waterlogged but legible, which described hearing voices in the trees and seeing glowing lights that moved like will-o'-the-wisps through the fog. More recent accounts paint an equally disturbing picture. In 2003, a group of campers decided to spend the night near the forest's edge, lured by the thrill of exploring its dark reputation. Around midnight, they began to hear it, a distant, wailing cry that seemed to come from all directions. At first, they thought it was an animal, but the sound grew louder and more human-like. Then came the footsteps, heavy, deliberate, and far too close for comfort. When they shone their flashlights into the trees, they saw nothing, but the screams continued, punctuated by guttural growls that sent them running for their lives. One of the campers later claimed to have captured audio of the incident on his phone. The recording, now infamous among paranormal enthusiasts, features a chilling sequence of events. The screams, the campers' panicked voices, and finally, a deep, unearthly roar that silences everything. The phone's camera, aimed at the forest, captured only shadows that seemed to move unnaturally. Locals have their own theories about the screaming forest. Some believe it's haunted by the spirits of those who drowned in the lake's murky waters, their cries echoing through the swamp. Others think the forest is home to a creature that defies classification, something ancient, primal, and fiercely territorial. Hunters who've ventured into the area speak of finding claw marks on trees, far higher than any bear could reach, and hearing snapping branches as if something massive was moving just out of sight. Perhaps the most disturbing stories come from those who've seen the lights, small, glowing orbs that hover among the trees. Those who follow them often disappear, only to be found days later with no memory of what happened. One man, a local guide, described seeing the lights up close, saying they seemed almost alive, pulsing as if in rhythm with a heartbeat. He refused to enter the forest again, claiming he'd felt something watching him from the shadows, something that wanted him to come closer. To this day, the screaming forest remains a place of fear and fascination. It draws the curious and the thrill-seekers, but most locals warn against venturing too deep, because once you're inside, the forest doesn't let go easily. So if you find yourself at the edge of Caddo Lake, staring into the darkness of the screaming forest, remember this: some cries are best left unanswered. Illinois, the Phantom of Resurrection Mary. In the southwest suburbs of Chicago, along a lonely stretch of Archer Avenue, there's a ghost story so well known, it's become legend. But for those who've experienced it, this is no mere urban myth. Resurrection Mary is a phantom hitchhiker whose presence has haunted this area for decades, her spectral figure appearing to those traveling the darkened roads late at night. What begins as a chance encounter often ends with an unsettling reminder that some spirits never leave the places they loved in life. The story of Resurrection Mary traces back to the 1930s. According to local lore, Mary was a young woman who attended a dance at the O. Henry Ballroom, a popular spot just outside Chicago. After an argument with her date, she stormed out, choosing to walk home alone along Archer Avenue. Tragically, she never made it. Mary was struck by a car and killed instantly. Her body later laid to rest in Resurrection Cemetery, just a few miles from where she died. But Mary's story didn't end with her burial. Soon after her death, drivers began reporting encounters with a young woman in a white dress walking along Archer Avenue. She would appear out of nowhere, flagging down passing cars for a ride. Those who stopped described her as quiet and distant, giving vague directions to take her further down the road. But when the car approached the gates of Resurrection Cemetery, Mary would vanish without a trace. One of the most famous accounts comes from a man named Jerry Paulus, who claimed to have danced with Mary at the O. Henry Ballroom in 1939. He described her as beautiful but strangely cold to the touch. After the dance, she asked him for a ride home. Jerry complied, but when they reached Resurrection Cemetery, she disappeared from the passenger seat. Shaken, Jerry later visited the cemetery, only to find her gravestone, a chilling confirmation of her identity. Over the years, sightings of Resurrection Mary have continued. Drivers report seeing her figure darting across the road, only to vanish before impact. Some claim to have picked her up, only to find their car seats inexplicably damp and icy cold where she sat. Others describe eerie handprints appearing on their car windows, as though she reached out to them from the other side. The gates of Resurrection Cemetery themselves have become a focal point for Mary's legend. In the 1970s, cemetery workers discovered 2 iron bars bent apart, with scorch marks that resembled handprints. Many believe these marks were left by Mary herself, desperately trying to escape her eternal confinement. More recently, A delivery driver passing Archer Avenue late at night reported seeing a figure standing by the side of the road. Thinking she needed help, he stopped and offered her a ride. The woman climbed into the truck, silent except for giving directions toward the cemetery. As they approached the gates, she turned to him with a vacant, almost pleading look, then vanished into thin air. When the driver checked his dashboard camera, it had stopped recording the moment she entered his truck. The question remains, why does Mary linger? Some believe she's searching for her lost love, forever bound to the road where she met her fate. Others think she's trying to warn travelers, hoping to spare them from a similar fate. Whatever the reason, her presence serves as a chilling reminder of the fragility of life and the weight of unfinished business. So, the next time you find yourself driving down Archer Avenue late at night, keep an eye on the road ahead. You might see a young woman in a white dress standing in the shadows, waiting for someone to give her one last ride. Louisiana, the Grunch Road Monster. Just outside the lively city of New Orleans lies a place shrouded in shadow and legend. A narrow, winding path known as Grunch Road. It's a stretch of desolate wilderness, its trees twisted and gnarled as though bent by unseen hands. But Grunch Road isn't famous for its eerie scenery. It's infamous for the creature that lurks there, waiting for anyone brave or foolish enough to venture too far down its path. They call it the Grunch Road Monster. The legend dates back to the earliest settlers of the area, blending local folklore with dark whispers of something inhuman. Descriptions of the creature vary, but most accounts agree on the same chilling details. It's said to be a half-human, half-goat being with sharp fangs, glowing eyes, and a thirst for blood. Some say it's the offspring of a cursed lineage, while others believe it's the result of a botched ritual meant to summon something unholy. Whatever its origin, one thing is clear. Those who encounter the Grunch Road Monster rarely return unchanged, if they return at all. One of the first documented encounters occurred in the early 1900s when a farmer claimed to hear his goats bleating in terror late one night. When he went to investigate, he found the pen empty, save for a trail of blood leading into the dense woods. Days later, his neighbors discovered his body deep in the forest, his face frozen in an expression of pure terror. Nearby, they found claw marks etched into the bark of a tree, marks far too large to belong to any known animal. Over the years, tales of the Grunch Road Monster grew, fueled by more encounters. In the 1970s, a group of teenagers dared to explore the road at night, armed with flashlights and bravado. As they walked deeper into the woods, they heard rustling in the bushes, followed by the unmistakable sound of hooves on the gravel road behind them. One of the teens turned, shining their flashlight into the darkness, only to see two glowing red eyes staring back. The group fled, but one of them claimed to hear heavy breathing and footsteps pursuing them all the way back to their car. One of the most chilling stories comes from a truck driver who broke down on Grunch Road in the 1990s. He reported seeing a figure standing just beyond the tree line, watching him as he worked to fix his engine. At first, he thought it was a stray goat, but as it stepped closer, he realized it was standing on two legs. The creature let out a low growl before retreating into the woods. The driver abandoned his truck and ran to the nearest house, too terrified to look back. Grunch Road itself seems to carry an aura of menace. Electronic devices fail, car engines sputter, and even the wind seems to die as you drive deeper into the area. Locals warn against traveling there at night, especially alone. They say the creature is drawn to isolation, using the cover of darkness to stalk its prey. And those who ignore the warnings often find themselves at the center of their own horror story. Some dismiss the tales of the Grunch Road Monster as nothing more than exaggerated folklore, meant to scare children and keep thrill seekers at bay. But even skeptics admit there's something unsettling about the place. The trees seem unnaturally still, and the air carries an oppressive silence, as though the road itself is holding its breath, waiting for something or someone. So if you ever find yourself near Grunch Road after sundown, remember the warnings. The monster doesn't need an invitation. It's already watching, waiting for the next traveler to stray too far into its domain. Minnesota, the cursed lake of Wendigo. In the frozen wilderness of northern Minnesota, where dense forests give way to icy lakes, there is a legend that sends shivers down the spines of locals. It's the tale of a cursed lake haunted by a malevolent spirit, the Wendigo. This creature, rooted in the lore of the Ojibwe people, is said to embody the darkest aspects of human nature: greed, hunger, and a relentless thirst for survival at any cost. The lake, whose name is deliberately left unspoken by those who live nearby, has a reputation for strange occurrences. Fishermen speak of eerie cries that echo across the water at night, rising and falling like mournful wails. Hunters report seeing shadowy figures darting between the trees, always just out of reach. But the most chilling accounts come from those who've seen the creature itself. A towering, emaciated figure with hollow eyes, jagged teeth, and an insatiable hunger. The Wendigo is said to appear during the coldest winters, when food is scarce and desperation sets in. According to legend, it was once human, a person who resorted to cannibalism in an act of survival and was cursed to wander the earth as a monster. Its presence is marked by an overwhelming sense of dread, as though the very air around it freezes with its touch. One of the earliest recorded encounters comes from the 1800s, when fur trappers operating near the lake vanished without a trace. Their abandoned camp was found weeks later, the snow around it stained with blood. The only clue to their fate was a series of massive footprints leading from the camp to the edge of the frozen lake, where they abruptly stopped. In the 1940s, a group of loggers working in the area reported hearing strange howls during the night. One of them, a man named Joseph, claimed to see a figure standing on the ice, its skeletal frame illuminated by the moonlight. He described its eyes as glowing embers, filled with malice. The figure vanished into the trees, leaving behind a trail of deep claw marks in the frozen surface. More recently, in 1998, a family on a winter fishing trip had a harrowing experience near the lake. According to their account, the ice beneath them began to groan and crack, even though it was thick enough to support their weight. They saw a dark figure moving under the ice, its shape distorted but unmistakably humanoid. As they scrambled to leave, they heard a voice calling out to them, a faint, rasping whisper that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. The family later discovered strange symbols carved into the trees near their campsite. Symbols they couldn't explain. When they showed the photos to a local Ojibwe elder, he refused to speak of them, saying only that they should never return to the lake. Scientists and skeptics have offered various explanations for the phenomena. Acoustic anomalies caused by the wind, natural shifts in the ice, or even mass hysteria. But those who've experienced the terror firsthand know better. The Wendigo is no mere legend. It's a force tied to the land, a reminder of the consequences of desperation and greed. The lake remains an unspoken boundary, a place where even the boldest hunters and adventurers dare not linger too long. Its frozen surface may look serene, but beneath it lies a darkness that refuses to thaw. So if you ever find yourself in Minnesota's North Woods, surrounded by the biting cold and the silence of the forest, remember this: the Wendigo isn't a myth. It's waiting, watching, and listening for the sound of cracking ice. Florida, the cursed dolls of Key West. In the picturesque, sun-soaked streets of Key West, Florida, where pastel houses line quiet lanes and the ocean breeze carries a sense of serenity, lurks an object that defies its surroundings. A small, unassuming doll with a reputation so dark it chills even the bravest visitors. His name is Robert, and his glassy-eyed stare has haunted the island for more than a century. But Robert is not the only cursed doll in Key West. There are whispers of others, lesser known but equally unsettling, hidden in the shadows of this otherwise idyllic island. Robert's story begins in 1904, when he was gifted to a young boy named Robert Eugene Otto, known as Gene. The doll, dressed in a sailor's outfit, quickly became Jean's constant companion. But it wasn't long before strange things began to happen. Jean's parents reported hearing their son speaking to the doll late at night in hushed, almost reverent tones. At first, they assumed Jean was simply playing. That was until they heard a deeper voice answering back. Neighbors claimed to see Robert moving from window to window when no one else was home. Jean's parents often awoke to find furniture overturned, objects thrown across the room, and Jean himself cowering in a corner, insisting Robert did it. The family eventually relegated the doll to the attic, but even there, its presence was inescapable. Footsteps could be heard pacing overhead, and faint giggling echoed through the house. When Jean grew up and inherited the house, he retrieved Robert from the attic, giving him a place of honor in his childhood bedroom. Guests often remarked on the doll's unsettling aura, claiming its expression seemed to change subtly when they weren't looking. Some even reported feeling lightheaded or nauseous in Robert's presence, as though he were draining the energy from the room. After Jean's death, the house changed hands several times, and with each new owner came more stories of Robert's malevolence. Finally, he was donated to the Fort East Martello Museum, where he resides to this day in a glass case. Visitors are warned to ask for Robert's permission before taking his photograph. Those who don't often regret it. The museum receives countless letters from people begging Robert for forgiveness, describing streaks of bad luck, car accidents, illnesses, and financial ruin that began after their encounter with the doll. But Robert is not alone in Key West's pantheon of cursed objects. In a small antique shop on the island, there is said to be another doll with a dark past. Locals call her Annabelle's shadow, and like Robert, her origins are shrouded in mystery. Those who have purchased her from the shop often return within days, shaken and pale, claiming the doll moved or whispered in the dead of night. One owner reported waking to find the doll at the foot of their bed, even though they'd locked it in a cabinet before going to sleep. Key West's reputation for the supernatural doesn't end with its cursed dolls. The island itself seems to carry an energy that defies explanation, a magnet for the strange and the otherworldly. Locals often tell of feeling watched while walking its quiet streets at night, as though the spirits of the past are still very much present. If you ever visit Key West, you might be tempted to see Robert for yourself, to stand before his glass case and stare into his hauntingly lifelike eyes. But remember, Robert is no ordinary doll. He demands respect, and those who fail to show it often pay the price. Oregon, the Witch's Castle of Portland. Deep within Forest Park, one of Portland, Oregon's most serene and sprawling natural reserves, lies a crumbling relic known as the Witch's Castle. Its moss-covered stones and graffiti-streaked walls may suggest nothing more than an abandoned structure, but locals know better. This place carries a heavy history, one marked by betrayal, murder, and whispers of dark rituals. The Witch's Castle is not just a ruin. It's a place where the past refuses to stay buried, and those who venture too close often find themselves ensnared in its chilling embrace. The history of the Witch's Castle dates back to the mid-1800s when the land was owned by a man named Danford Balch. Balch and his family lived in isolation, carving out a life in the dense Oregon wilderness. But that isolation came at a cost. As the story goes, Danford's daughter, Anna, fell in love with a young man named Mortimer Stump, a laborer who worked on the family's land. When Anna and Mortimer asked for Danford's blessing to marry, he refused, threatening violence if they disobeyed him. Undeterred, the couple eloped, marrying in secret. When they returned to Forest Park, hoping to reconcile, they found Danford waiting for them. Consumed by rage, he shot Mortimer point-blank in front of Anna. Danford was arrested and later became the first man hanged in Multnomah County, but his act of violence left a scar on the land. Over the years, strange occurrences began to plague the area where the Balch family once lived. Shadows moved where no one stood, ghostly figures appeared in the trees, and eerie cries echoed through the woods at night. The structure now known as the Witch's Castle was built decades later, originally intended as a ranger station. But even during its construction, workers reported unsettling events. Tools disappearing, phantom footsteps, and the sound of whispering voices carried on the wind. The building was abandoned after a series of inexplicable accidents, and it soon gained a reputation as a gathering place for those drawn to the occult. Locals began reporting signs of rituals conducted within the ruins. Pentagrams etched into the walls, melted candles scattered across the floor, and animal remains arranged in strange patterns. Some claimed to see hooded figures moving through the trees at night, their chants rising in unison with the rustling leaves. Others spoke of an oppressive energy that seemed to grow stronger the closer they approached the structure. One particularly chilling account comes from a group of high school students who visited the Witch's Castle on Halloween night in the 1990s. Armed with flashlights and a sense of adventure, they explored the ruins, laughing off the legends. But their laughter quickly turned to fear when they heard footsteps approaching from the surrounding woods. Thinking it was a park ranger, they prepared to leave, but no one emerged from the trees. Instead, the footsteps circled them, growing louder and closer until the sound seemed to come from within the ruins themselves. The group fled, but one student claimed to see a figure standing in the doorway as they ran, its eyes glowing faintly in the dark. Paranormal investigators have since visited the Witch's Castle, capturing unexplainable audio recordings of whispers and distant screams. Thermal cameras have picked up fleeting images of figures that vanish the moment they're seen. One investigator described the experience as stepping into a trap, as though the very air of the place conspired to hold them there. Today, the Witch's Castle is a popular spot for hikers and urban explorers, but its dark reputation remains. Those who visit often leave offerings, flowers, coins, or small trinkets, perhaps as a gesture of respect, or perhaps as an attempt to ward off whatever lingers in the shadows. So if you find yourself wandering the trails of Forest Park, be mindful of where you tread. The Witch's Castle may look like nothing more than a crumbling ruin, but it's a place that remembers. And it's always watching, waiting for the next visitor to cross its threshold. These 10 stories remind us that every corner of the United States carries its own shadows, its own echoes of the past. From cursed dolls to haunted lakes, from restless spirits to mysterious creatures, these tales are more than just legends. They are warnings, whispers of the unseen forces that share our world. As you close this chapter of stories, remember, the unseen is always closer than you think. These stories remind us that every state holds its own darkness, its own secrets waiting to be uncovered. The question is, are you brave enough to seek them out? Thank you for watching to this point. Do not forget to subscribe before you go. Which of these tales left you looking over your shoulder? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more journeys into the unknown. Until next time, tread carefully, and don't let the shadows catch you.